saying men should be dangerous. By dangerous, that implies I should be ready to threaten someone, to hurt somebody.
No, you should be capable of it. There's nothing to you otherwise.
Welcome to the Dangerous Man Podcast, where we talk about how to become a better man, take responsibility for our mission, create value for others, and the many failures and lessons we've learned along the way. Stay dangerous. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to The Dangerous Man. This is your host, John Kostohris, joined by co-host
Adam Thooft. What is going on this morning, John?
You know, I had while we were getting into the intro here and diving right in, I had this image in my head of this dude. I was Googling once, like, dangerous man, and I was like looking for different, like, what are different quotes, or who in the space is kind of like using that coin, that right?
Yeah.
And using that phrase. And there was this dude with a beard and like a suspenders and boots and just like a cowboy hat. And he was just like in the Wild West, kind of sitting in his rocker chair, like on the porch. And he's just like,
I think I may have seen one of these
dangerous
videos.
man. A dangerous man. And he just like goes on this little like rant of what a dangerous man is. It's pretty badass. I loved it. But I just felt like there were supposed to be, there were two things that happen. One, like a bunch of like classic bank robbers with like bandanas coming from their mouths down and like, you know what I mean? Like the old, like Wild West bank robbers. And then he just like, pow, 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 two pistols out, just like, or maybe both happens. Maybe at the end of that, actually, this is what we'll do. Then a dude pops out with a banjo on the porch and is just like, ding, 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 and they're just like, and then they start like breaking into like a yodel, so that's what's up this morning is I think that's a life goal of mine. I think I want to put myself in a place where I can be on my porch with like a shotgun or two shooter pistols and just like shoot some bank robbers and then like
whip out a banjo.
So that would be my victory anthem, is just like, you know, like the devil went down to Georgia, kind of a, you know what I mean? Like it's just like the fiddle, like just going nuts. So that's the vibe. But no, that's, if that could be the soundtrack, that might be there's something about Wild West that, and just like country, that kind of style of music, country, folk, bluegrass, is just like, I don't know, man. It puts you back in tune with something deeper and historic, and there's just so many eras of history.
Makes you think of like old school America.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly the feeling I was trying to convey. So, America.
America. Hell
and yeah, absolutely. So, I want to go back to that kind of a vibe. But anyways, one thing that I was thinking a lot about this week, Adam, is, and I've been having some conversations with some other men in my life, and it revolves around the word duty. And I'm gonna say, like, it's not necessarily like initially the funnest topic that you would think of, like, when you hear the word duty. But honestly, I think it's one of the most convicting and deeply rooted themes of being a man. And I was like, wow, you know, I can't believe we haven't really talked about it in this way. But there's a certain, like, I don't know, I have a few stories I want to share and some of my reflections on it. But I would offer a little bit of a definition. And this is like me shooting from the hip on the definition. And that is to say that I think you could refine other types of ways of explaining duty, but this one just seemed to really make sense to me. And I think it offers, if not the total perspective of duty from this one definition, it offers it may be a glimpse into, I think, how this is important for a man. So with that said, duty, to rise above oneself for a mission, and then to embrace his purpose, to provide value to others. That's kind of the purpose, the reason, so why it's something behind my duty.
It's something that a man does. Yeah. It's kind of more of a verb than it is.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'd say it's something that governs a man.
Yeah.
It's you know, I think if we're going to dive into like what, I don't know, something I was talking about was like, what's your why in life? Mm-hmm. And I think that could be an interesting conversation. But like, why do I do certain things? And I think there's a certain level of self-awareness that comes with understanding my why, what motivates me, what drives me. And I think that's a really good thing to find out. I think every man should have awareness on that. And that's not quite where we're going with this today. But I think duty is a slightly different thing where it's like, look, I might not exactly know what I'm trying to do in my life, but if I have a duty to rise above myself for a mission, for other people, to serve other people, the words we like to use, provide value to others. If I'm embracing something above myself, and the duty is like the part of like rise above himself, like the duty to, blank, to do things, to do something. And so I wanted to kind of break that down a little bit, but honestly, the word duty never really meant anything to me at all. I used to hear my dad, he would kind of go on, he was the first one to kind of introduce this to me and model this for me. And I think that's a really powerful thing. It's like to have a father figure, especially your dad, birth, your blood dad, to model that really well. He would always go to work every day, and he worked a simple 9-to-5 job, but he'd always go to work every day. And whenever he would share about it, it would be something along the lines of like, my role is to provide for you guys, provide for the family, so that we can, provide financially, so that we can have a family, so that we can have those relationships. We can have that safe place. As a child, I don't have to, As a child, I'm taken care of, and I can have an environment that's loving and nurturing and caring for my mother and my father and my siblings. And my dad's role, there's a certain duty to rise above how he feels, what he wants to do, even just like, whatever. That comes and goes and sways. Feelings and emotions and thoughts, they change. But what's unchanging is a man's duty to embrace something greater above himself, a mission. And so for my dad, that was his family. To rise above himself, to go to work every day, and to put excellence into that, and to really care about that, and to, there was something greater. And he used to always tell me, he said, John, and this is one of those things that your dad says, like, like your dad has like certain coined phrases that you could probably like wake up in the middle of the night having not a nightmare, but like a words ringing in your head. Like that's how many times you've heard it. And it could be like, we always shut the bathroom or like the toilet lid. Otherwise, I don't know, fill in the blank. Otherwise, everything goes to shit. And then in the middle of the night, you'd be like at a ballroom dance, like in your dream. And then all of a sudden, like, you have to shut the toilet lid, otherwise everything goes to shit. And then you start seeing everything go to shit in the dream. You're like, I forgot to close the toilet lid. Yeah, it's just like,
my duty.
Oh, no. Oh, but that kind of a thing. Anyways, he used to always say, John, the way you think about things is the way you feel about them. The way you think about things determines how you'll feel about them. And at the moment I was like, whatever, Dad, that's just like your phrase. It's important or something. I don't care. I'm mad. Like, whatever.
I'll wake up in a cold sweat in my dreams later about it.
Right. Whereas like I obviously was like emotional in the moment, and that's why he would say it, because he's like, the way you think about it determines the way you feel about them. And but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was definitely like an anchor statement, which I kind of just made that up, but like an anchor to the way my dad thought. It was central to my dad's mentality on how he approached being a man, how he approached his duty, which was, it's not just about, how I feel about things, but I actually have control to think about things and to change my feelings and to align them with my duty and my mission, my purpose. And and that would always be to rise above himself, to love our family, to love his wife, to love his kids, and to do what was necessary of him. And I think that's probably the third bullet of duty, to do what is necessary of him for that, to accomplish that. And so duty isn't like a nice, fun feelings kind of word. This is a grit word. This is a characteristic that it isn't. I don't know. It's just it's very anchored in something deeper than I think so much of society likes to just like how I feel, what makes sense, what I love, like what I like, what I want to do. And it's just
what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's just me, me. And duty's like, stop being a fucking bitch, grow some pants, let your balls drop, and do the fucking thing you need to do. Do the work and rise above your damn self and go and do it. Like, that's just, and then he'd be like, but nope. Like, that's the duty. Like, that's what I got to do. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And for me, that message never resonated. I never liked hearing that. It's not exactly what you want to hear as a kid who's emotional and wants to go and do the fun thing and, whatever. Yeah. Not that you can't do fun things in life, but like as a kid, like there's no sense of wanting to grow up in me.
Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. I was a boy.
Yeah.
But no doubt these are themes that I needed to hear and need to hear, especially as a man, that I need to embrace and start to live out. I think you'll see the transition from boy to man happen most clearly when they embrace their duty.
Yeah.
And so I want to tell a little bit of my story, but where this really hit home for me was about 2.5 years ago. I dropped into a period of time where I was on fire for a mission. I was on fire for a purpose in my life. And I was like all in, and I ended up really embarrassing myself along the way. I think I really invested a lot of myself, put a lot of my identity on the line with this thing. And I was, early 18, I was like 19, 20 years old. And I ended up, I won't go into details on it just because it's not exactly something I want to get into right now, but there was this period of time where I was really putting myself out there and I was sold out for a mission. And I just remember during that time that I was, like I said, I was deeply embarrassed by I was confident, but it was like the wrong thing. And that really it was like, oh, that was humiliating for me. And so I remember really withdrawing from life. Really, I stopped caring about everything because everything I'd put my identity, my purpose into was just kind of like it flopped on its face. And I was like, whoa, I don't think I quite understood what this was. And I know it's all rather vague, and my apologies. Maybe I'll go into it another time. But the main takeaway from that is I launched into this period of depression in my life. For probably lasted about a year. And I don't know, for those who maybe haven't experienced depression, it's every kind of bit of energy, any bit of joy or hope is just sucked from you, and you're left with very much I have a hard time getting out of bed. I had no energy throughout the day, and I'd have to sleep 10, 12, 16 hours a day, and I just had no energy. I would, in my mind, I was always thinking about things, and I was questioning why I was alive. I was questioning what my purpose was. I was thinking about how I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to have a job. I just saw no future in having to get up and work every day. I was like, my dad went to work every day and provided for a family. Like, that sounds like hell to me. The last thing I want to do is go and work a job I hate, and then if I didn't, nothing would come into the bank account and our family would flop. Like that just sounds like living hell. And I couldn't, at the time I was working a job that drained me. I was doing junk removal, and it was nothing. I hated it. It was draining. It was an exhausting physical labor job. And I wasn't able to find anything that I really truly loved. What I had been doing was a lot of mission work, and that's what really I think the exit, ending that was such an embarrassing time for me that I was like, man, the only thing I loved, it isn't an option anymore. And it's just like, there was this whole, the dark cloud around that. And then I have to go and move into the world and grow up and be a man and get a job. And that was all just like the worst. And really the transition that occurred it took about a year, but I think if I could put my finger on one thing, it's when I discovered Grant Cardone, who is he's a philanthropist, entrepreneur, sales guru, real estate multi-billionaire. And for me, he was a really inspiring figure. And I actually didn't encounter him through social media. I read his book. Be Obsessed or Be Average. And even that title, Be Obsessed or Be Average. And I was like, whoa, I feel pretty average right now at best. But this idea of I'd be obsessed that I wouldn't be average. So I was just sucked into this book, but he starts with this story. And I know we've talked about it in other episodes, so I I won't get super deep into it, but really the big takeaway is he was in this addiction with drugs. And growing up, he had always told his mom, like, Mom, I'm going to, his dad died when he was young. And they used to have this great house, great property, a lot good money. Like they were well off. And then his dad died, and then they went into basically full recession mode. And they lived in the city with, a cheap apartment, and they had nothing. And that was really hard for him. And he would always tell his mom, I'm going to be rich one day. I'm going to go and, I'm going to make a difference in the world. I'm going to change lives. I'm going to do something, whatever. And then I think what he describes in the book is that he got deep into drug addiction, and he got into all this mischief and trouble because he was basically running from that deep calling in him to go and live for something greater, to be something better, to go and be rich, and to do all these things that he talked about as a kid. And he just felt such a, where he was and where he felt called to go was such a deep cavern between them, such a distance between those edges of the cliffs, that it was just such despair and depression for him that he just numbed it with drugs. And I really, as you can imagine, connected with that message because I was in the lowest of lows in my life. And he tells his journey, through starting to put a lot of dedication to his work and to his job. And he wanted to become the best car salesman. And he put everything into that and started seeing lots of results over time, right? Over time. And that ability to take that energy out of drugs and put that energy towards what this deep calling in him to work and actually start moving towards that, his addiction went away overnight. And it happened. There was a whole process to get him to realize that. But when he was really in the thick of it, he's rode that the rest of his career into a lot of success. And his mantra really became, at a certain point, he built the whole TV show around this: do whatever it takes. And that's not there's nothing about do whatever it takes it might seem kind of like, oh, that's inspiring and emotional, but like everything about that word is duty. Yeah. Everything about that phrase is, again, like my dad's phrase, the way you think about things, the way you feel about them, do whatever it takes. These are like the statements your dads say, and you're like, whatever, Dad. But like, they're the deep masculine rooted man traits that go the deepest, and they're duty based.
I think like as a boy, when your dad might say some of these things, because you're a boy, you don't understand that because he says these things, he also like lives them.
Yeah, right.
Which I think now being an adult, it's like, oh, like I actually understand that the reason why you say these things so much is because you live them.
Yeah.
And I think that brings so much more meaning to the things that they're saying. Because like Grant Cardone, the reason why he says do whatever it takes is because he does whatever it takes.
Yeah. And I'd imagine he realized that, looking back on his story, when he started to take the posture of do whatever it takes, he saw the transformation occur.
Mm-hmm.
And notice it doesn't say, do whatever you feel like doing.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you want to do. No, it's like, do whatever it takes. It's all about action. It's all about, it's like you said earlier, the verb of duty. It's doing whatever it takes. It's determining and choosing your thoughts, and the ones that don't serve you, you get rid of them. It's this. I have this power in my hands to take control of my life and my situation and my thoughts and my feelings. And sometimes we need some help with that, to be honest. Sometimes we do need a guide. Sometimes we do need, I've spent time with a good therapist. I've read books from guys like Grant. You need somebody to help offer, in the words of John Eldridge, who he writes a lot about the masculine heart. He writes a lot about being a man and what's in our hearts, what's in us that makes us different. He writes a lot about you needing a man, a father figure, a dad, some kind of guide or mentor to offer interpretation, to offer perspective on what we're experiencing, to help us to set the narrative straight, for us to understand, what's the narrative that I'm understanding from my experiences, and kind of, it's kind of like, like a crew chief in a race. You think like NASCAR.
Yeah.
The crew chief is gonna say, he's gonna basically tell him like, "Yep, this guy passed you, and this happened, and it's not the end of the world, and this is why, and this is how you can get back." And he, oh, okay. Instead of getting discouraged, he's just like, okay, here's the next plan. Like, here's what that meant, and here's what we're gonna do next. And that's the interpretation I'm referring to. Here's kind of what happened, and here's what happened next. It's their perspective that they have to be able to, where we can't always see things. But anyways, I wanted to offer that because I think that's the duty, And so, yeah, I guess I was thinking we could spend a couple minutes here just, discussing this a little, Adam, before we wrap. But I do want to offer, like, I think this is why it's on. Oh, yeah, this is the end of the story. I knew I had another piece to this.
And I was like,
so coming back to me, right? So going through this depression, and what was the switch for me? Well, it was the Grant Cardone, and really hearing his story of rising from addiction to really, he decided to pursue his calling and to embrace the duty to do whatever it takes to get there, and do whatever it takes to quit drugs, and do it, whatever, applying that to his life. And I think that's what really struck me and stirred within me was there was actually this switch that happened of my whole life, my whole childhood. Duty, all those themes meant nothing to me. I kind of hated them. It just seemed like whatever, like that seems boring. But I realized as a young adult, as a 20, 21, 22-year-old, I realized that this was what I needed to have some grit. Not for the sake of having grit, but for the sake of like rising above myself, rising out of this muck, moving into purpose, moving into, like, if I define duty, to embrace your purpose and to provide value for others. Like I can move into a posture of providing value to others, and to, what is my calling in life? We talked a lot about in storytelling the hero's two callings, two adventures, the two paths, right? And we have this calling, and there's often a refusal of the call that happens. But at a certain point, and that's what happened for me, there's this calling, refusal of the call. And eventually I got to the point where it's like, nope, like things are so bad. Like I have to embrace this calling. I have to take my duty up. I have to go and live above myself. I have to go live for something deeper. And I think what resonates with me in this was in my story that I remember being on the phone with my friend, Steven, and we were talking, and I was telling him about all this. I was like, dude, like, I just think as a man, it's my duty to like go and find a way to make money and like to provide for my family. Like, it's like, dude, I feel this in my heart. Like I see my church, I see the need financially. I see, I see all these things I care about in the world, the way that, the way the government's going, the way this is going. And I'm like, and wow, like, I just think instead of, and this is where it switched for me, is like, man, I feel like instead of sitting on the couch and playing video games all the time and wanting to just like go and hang out with friends every day and just like, whatever, just go and have fun and not worry about anything. I was like, wow, like I feel like in 10, 15, 20 years, I'm going to look back and go, whoa, I sat around and wasted my life and I did nothing. And I feel like I'm going to be judged for what I did with my time, how I used my life. And I know I'm a Christian, and I believe that when my life finishes, I'm going to be held accountable for what I did. And it's like, wow, like I see men that are hustling every day, getting after it. And a lot of people are like, good for them. But it's like, dude, like if 10 years later, 10 years from now, I look back at myself and I see that I was on the couch at a time when I had so much time, disposable time, and so much disposable energy compared to when you're older and when you're, more tied into commitments like family or, old age or whatever. And I was like, wow, like I have a duty to use these minutes now as a young adult in my 20s to go out and to become the person that I'm called to be, so that in 10 years I can look back and say, like, wow, like here's the ultimatum that happened in my mind. It's like, you can walk into any library in America and you can check out for free the book. What's it called? Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Anybody can go and check that book out.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you have all of society who's like, not all of society, but you have so many people that are just like, wow, like, if you're rich, then you're an asshole. And they're like, man, like, I could never be rich. Like, and they're like, I'm going to sit on the couch and eat potato chips. And it's like, I'm going to, whatever, going to play cornhole on a weekend. I'm going to sleep in on a weekday and do nothing with my life. And this was me when I was that age. And I realized I was like, oh my gosh, like anybody can go and learn these things. Anyone can go turn their life around. Anyone can read a book. Anyone can decide they're going to grow up, decide they're going to live for something bigger. And yet I wasn't. And yet people don't choose that. And yet people just let it slide. And then they make excuses the rest of their life. And nobody can depend on them. They aren't emotionally present for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
They feel terrible in their health. And they make every excuse and throw under the rug why something in the government is wrong.
Yeah.
And yet they haven't taken their damn duty. They haven't embraced their calling as a man to go and fucking grow up and to go and actually embrace the greatness, the potential that they've been given.
Mm-hmm.
Every roller coaster, you go up the roller coaster and it's the potential energy growing, as science determines it. Potential energy rises and rises. And you get to a point where you hit a peak and there's kinetic energy when that's the motion of the roller coaster going down. And I think some people are so discouraged to even start the climb. But like the amount of potential that we have is infinite. And I believe we've been created for a mission, for a purpose. And there's people we're called to go and serve and love and care for. Family, community, whatever, country, whatever scale. And the duty piece is 100% related to that. It's not what my purpose is, but I have a duty and responsibility to go and to do and to embrace. That is the duty piece. And that's when I told my friend Steve on the phone this, and he was like, wow, it sounds like God has really given you a heart for duty and responsibility. And I was like, and I agreed, but I was also like, yes, but this is for everybody. It's just a matter of like, when is it going to click for you? Mm-hmm. Because I don't think you can, I mean, the hard thing about duty is like my dad, you can say that my whole life to me, but it wasn't him that unlocked that in my heart.
Yeah.
It was something in my story that all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, I want to live for something more. And in fact, I'm responsible and I have a duty to do it. Yeah.
And there might be like a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, duty, like this is really important. But then like even how we've defined it, like rise above yourself for a mission and embrace your purpose. There's some people who are like, yeah, I really want to like embrace my duty, but I don't know what my mission is. I don't know what my purpose is.
Yeah.
And I think for that, it's kind of about, doing whatever it takes to find that. So
absolutely.
Your duty could actually just be, your mission is to find a mission and your purpose is to find a purpose.
Yeah.
And to like flush that out properly. So then you actually have in your mind what you're going for, and to know your motivations behind it. So then you can kind of know the direction that you're going in with your duty. So it's not just like, oh, this is my mission, I guess. But it's not like really. But yeah, so I'd definitely encourage, this is even an encouragement to myself of being able to have hope and to know that even if we feel like at times that we don't really have much of a mission or a purpose, that we will find that mission and purpose. And I believe that it'll actually be revealed to us.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think it's good to think about it this way of, like you could be where I was sleeping all day because I couldn't bear to get out of bed because I was just miserable and depressed and despairing. And I didn't believe that there was hope for me. I didn't believe there was a mission for me. I didn't believe I had a purpose or a mission. I believed my life was worth nothing, and there was nothing ever good that would come from me, or that it was too hard and too much energy. And for me, Grant Cardone, his story woke me up to that was not the case. Because if I could relate to him and his story of addiction and we were about the same age when he made that shift. I realized that I could do it.
Yeah.
And I think a nuance I want to add to duty is I just want to say, like, you'll find the purpose and the mission along the way.
Yeah.
But the duty, I think, is a little broader than that. And let me put it this way. This is kind of how I can get what's my duty? Here's a pulse check. Do you want to be a great father for a family? Do you want to have a family, get married, and be a father? It's like, I go, yeah. It's like, okay, well, what does that look like? Well, I got to be a strong leader. I got to be a capable man. I got to be able to financially take care of them. I have to, I want to be able to love them and be present and play with them and have energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be fat and have a beer belly and, have a dad bod. I want to be strong and I want to be an inspiration. I want to be able to, run marathons and do really cool adventures. And I want to go into the wilderness with them and teach them how to backpack and canoe. And I want to be able to lift all the stuff and not be a slob. I want to, whatever. I want to be like charismatic and loving and caring enough so I can actually attract a good wife, not just be a slob. So it's like, well, that's your duty right there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a duty and responsibility to pursue and become those things. And so what do I got to do? Okay, start doing those things. That is duty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's different than purpose or mission, because maybe my ultimate purpose, or I'm not as motivated by the idea of like having a family or whatever, but it's like, but I have a duty to those people. I have a duty to be that man so I can help support and care financially, all the things I listed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to do whatever it takes, and I have to start taking control of that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's a good pulse check on duty is what has to get done? Who do I need to be and what actions are required of that person? Okay, I have a duty and responsibility to do that and not to slack it or just to let somebody else do it. It's actually on me.
Yeah.
And so I love, so really at what Adam's saying and what would it look like, guys, if every man, every boy, what would it look like if we decided to make that shift?
Yeah.
From being a boy to being a man, from being in the muck, from being in despair, from being in mediocre, average, meh. What if we made the choice to embrace our duties to become the men that we're called to be, that we need to be, that others need us to be? What would that look like? What would our lives look like? What would our financial, bank accounts look like? What would our relationships start to become and transform into? How would people start talking about me in my life? How would people shake my hand to look at me differently if I did that? What would people say differently about my funeral if I made that shift versus if I didn't? And what would you want them to, how would you want them to look at you, shake your hand? What would you want them to say at your funeral? How would you want your wife or your kids to describe you when they become adults or older, And what would that look like for our communities if you just imagine like your inner circle of, 3, 4, 5 friends all made this shift over the next, month, 2 months, year? What would your circles look like if you just had a bunch of men living with purpose, embracing their duty and starting to just become something more? Like what would our communities look like? Our city, our state, our country, even if imagine all of the men that you come in contact with. Imagine them making this shift, this choice. What would it look like if we had a bunch of men living and fulfilling their duty and living with a sense of duty and purpose?
Yeah. And it starts with just having that one decision to take on that duty.
Yeah, absolutely. Share the show if you want to help other men embrace danger and become truly great. You've been listening to The Dangerous Man. Join us next time. Until then,
Claim your greatness
and stay dangerous.